Welcome to the Financial Coaches Podcast, where we talk about how to build your practice from startup to scale up while being the kind of coach your clients crave. Finally, a podcast for financial coaches. Here are your hosts, Maria Casillas and Cody Sizemore.
Well, hello and welcome back to the Financial Coaches Podcast. My name is Cody Sizemore and I'm joined here by my lovely co-host, Maria Casillas. And today we're going to be talking about something that is every coach's worst nightmare. So before we get into that, let me just say a few things. Number one, if this is your first time listening, we appreciate you checking the show out, sincerely. I don't know how you found us, but regardless, we're just happy that you're here. And we hope that today you get some value. If you did get value from today's episode, we would love for you to leave a rating, a review on the show, share the show with a friend that might, get some value from it as well. And, obviously come back next week and check out the show next week, as well as any other show that we've done in the past as well. So we just want to welcome you guys in, and anyone who's been listening to this show every single week for God knows how long. We also just want to give you guys a special shout out as well. You are what we call our every weekers. We really do appreciate you guys. You're the people who really keep this show going. I mean, to be completely honest with you guys. So we really appreciate the love and support that you continue to show us every single week. And, hopefully we can continue to deliver for you guys. And the last thing I'll say is we actually are going to be talking about a topic today from some coaches that we connected with. And I know for a fact that the next episode that we're going to be doing is also going to be in that same manner from a coach that we connected with. So the best way to connect with us would be to join our Facebook group, which is simply called the Financial Coaches Community, I New Money Habits. It's free to join. It's a great place to connect with us. It's a great place to connect with other coaches. And honestly, it's a really good place to ask questions because you never know if your question might be on the next episode of the Financial Coaches Podcast like we are doing today. So with all that being said, I'm going to welcome in Maria. We'll kind of set the stage as far as what we're going to be talking about today, and then we'll jump in. So Maria, how you doing?
Yes, sir. I'm doing well. Thank you. Appreciate you asking.
Awesome. Love it. Love it. Is it getting cold in Arizona now?
Not yet. I mean, my windows are open. I'm sleeveless today. It's mid-November, but here we are, and I'm loving it. So it's why I'm here. It's why I stand through the 120-degree summers.
Yeah, it snowed last week where I'm at.
Oh man,
So,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and it was a heavy snow. I saw 2 snowmen in my neighborhood. So,
They're taking over.
Yeah, exactly. But snowmen aside, so you were actually contacted by a coach recently, and you guys had a good conversation. And I do think that this is something that like a lot of coaches are worried about. They're it's in the back of their mind, maybe more often than not. And that's just simply the fact of like, hey, sometimes we bring on clients and things don't go exactly the way that we hope, and then they drop out of our program. So just talking a little bit more about that, I mean, we actually had a conversation around that on my end recently, and how I kind of handled that. So I'm not the only one who deals with this. I know that, pretty much every coach deals with this. But if I'm not mistaken, when you had this conversation with the coach, it was happening to them quite a bit, and then they made some shifts, and now it's happening quite less.
Yes,
Correct?
yes. So all of that is correct with the exception of how I met this coach. So he did not approach me necessarily. I actually met him inside of one of our meetups. So
Perfect.
so the only reason I'm correcting you is because what was so fun about this conversation was his background. So obviously, like in the meetup, we have all of the coaches in attendance, and his background was a photo of somebody jumping out of an airplane. And so like we went through much of the conversation, and he had not said anything about this. And I actually private messaged him and said, hey, that's a really cool picture. Is that you? And he didn't see that. He must have been so engrossed in the conversation. He didn't see the private message. And so I just couldn't help myself towards the end of the conversation. And I asked him if that was him. And I did this in the group. When he replied that, yes, it was, we just had a very short conversation about that being one of his hobbies, and how cool that is. So it's always fun to get to know our coaches on a little bit more of a personal level. But just out of, facetiousness, I asked him, so how long have you been coaching? Right. And he said about a year. And I said, well, which of those is harder? Which one's more difficult for you, jumping out of an airplane or being a financial coach? And
It's a good
I was,
question.
I was being facetious. I was just, kind of expecting him to be like, ha ha ha. Well, there was like this pregnant pause
No.
followed by, sometimes it's the plane, but sometimes it's the clients. It's coaching. And so it just kind of led into a good conversation about what he actually meant by that. And I think that the others in attendance really received some value from that. And I just thought maybe we could bring it to the table here. And he gave me permission to do so. So um, one of the things that he had said was that I said, what is, describe for me like your most difficult client? And he said, the one that doesn't show up. It's really hard to coach somebody who doesn't show up. And so, like, I think all of our listeners, and I know for sure you and I, Cody, we can totally relate to that. And so he said that it was when the client doesn't show up, that's so hard to actually help that person. And I 100% agree with that. I think you totally understand that as well, Cody. And so we kind of got on a conversation about how often that happened for him. And he said, if you had asked me that about 6 months ago, I would have said about 90% of my clients, they'll start the program and then they'll drop out. Now, that's a pretty high percentage of
Mhm.
people who drop out.
Yeah.
And so, without getting into the details of that first, I asked, what does it look like now? And he said, I'm happy to report that I haven't lost a client in 4 months. So, we're like, that's a really great shift. And yeah, right. I agree. So we just had a little bit of a discussion around what shifted for him, what changed, and there are a couple of things I want to say about this, and I want to kind of have your opinion on it as well. One direction I want to go in is just the small things that he did that had such a big impact on what the outcomes were. But the other direction I'd like to go in is the mindset that he had around some of it. So, which of those two things you want to go first?
I think the mindset first.
Mindset. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So, what was very interesting to me is that I asked, I said, well, you must have done something to get them in the door. And he said, well, I mean, I help them to see, a little bit about how much help they need and that their life is kind of going down the direction that they're not really happy with. So I helped them to see that. And he said very quickly, but ultimately it was their decision. Like they're the ones who had to make that choice and they signed on. Then when I asked, well, about them leaving, and he said, well, I mean, it was my fault. Like it was my fault that they left. So I was able to just have this very candid conversation about, isn't it interesting that when our clients come in, we are more than ready to give them that agency to say it's all on you, man. Like you're the one who made that choice. But when they're leaving, we just take on that blame all to ourselves. I just want to hear, what do you think about that? Just that pattern, Cody.
Well, I think it's natural. Um, but I also think that when they leave and we put the blame on ourselves, it's probably a mix of number one, we're taking responsibility for the client's choices and actions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then number two, I also think that it's kind of a like confidence, maybe imposter syndrome side of things, because like at least what I'm hearing is that when they sign on, well, that's not because of me.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't have done it. That like that's all them. I don't want to take credit for that. That's not me. Like blah blah blah. But then when they
Mm-hmm.
do move out, well, it's all my fault, kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. So you didn't give yourself credit at first, and then you're taking the blame. Like to me, that's a very like I'm not good enough kind of mindset personally.
Mhm, mhm. It's interesting, huh? And it plays out in so many areas of our lives. Like I can just tell you in our personal family, for example, we're all grown. I'm the oldest of 5 kids and we're all grown. And so obviously my parents, they're done with the whole parenting thing. But it's so funny because truly I don't think we're ever done with our parenting thing. And so it's been interesting to watch as our family, like as me and my siblings, as we go through life. And there's all these ups and downs, like there is with any life. And watching my parents, especially my dad, he will when something great happens, he's always so quick to be like, "Glory to God." Like, I have nothing to do with that. Like
Hmm.
they're good kids. I'm so proud of them, but it's not me, it's their decisions. And then when there are some really important downfalls, it's always like, "Oh, what did I do wrong?" Like, what did I as a parent do wrong that made this, thing happen without the recognition of actually, these kids are 30 years or older now. And so it's okay for you to allow them to make their own decisions and recognize that they have agency in those decisions. But this very much reminds me of that, where it's like you said, there's either we give them the credit and then we take the blame. And I think the mindset around that is so interesting because we can't both of those logically, if we just think logically, you can't have both of those at the same time. Because I agree with you that, you use the word responsibility, and I want to just hone in on that for a second because it is so true that when somebody leaves our program, it's important for us to look at responsibility. We want to take responsibility for the things that we did do that may have actually contributed to that. But also, we don't want to steal their responsibility because that takes it away from them. And so there's this delicate line that we have to walk where we recognize that there's a role that we played and there's a role that they played. And we need to not only show up and learn from our role, how do we do better? What did we do well? But we also need to allow them to learn from their role in that as well. So
I completely agree with that. Um, was that the only mindset shift that you guys talked about, or was there another one?
that was the biggest one
That
that
was
we
the biggest
talked
one.
about. Yeah. Yeah. What else do you hear that you'd like to share?
Well, I'm not hearing anything. I'm actually just kind of curious. So obviously, you guys had that conversation, and I'm assuming that you brought that kind of perspective to the table for him.
Shortly.
What was his reaction to that?
He agreed. He saw that that was something. In fact, I think he's actually the one who in just kind of passively said, "Yep, when it's them coming in, it's all them, and when if they leave it." Now, I think the way he said it was, "Anything negative is my fault." I think is
Hmm.
how he actually just said that. So he was able to recognize that there was a more generalized mindset around that anything negative must be him. So that was his
Yeah.
quick reaction.
Okay. So he basically just recognized it. Okay. 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 And then, so you mentioned that there's the mindset side of things, and then there was also the I guess you could say like application side of things. Like, so
Yeah.
what exactly did he do to see this major shift of him, being able to retain those clients?
Yeah. So I think what's interesting is part of it is connected to the mindset because
Okay.
he recognized some of that. And so tell you the two main things that he said, and then you'll see where that connection is. So the two main things he said was that he had a better selection of clients. So he was willing to let people go, like turn them away. He not take every single person on, which we've talked about extensively here before,
So
that there's that
important. Yeah.
tendency to just like, I want to help everyone. But that's not going to happen. So he recognized that. And then the other thing that he mentioned was that there was just an increase in his confidence, and that confidence likely came from repetition, 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 just doing things over and over and over to a point where he felt more confident, which then probably led to the ability to say, you know what, this is not a good fit, and be able to recognize when people don't have their own agency and they're not willing to show up for themselves. And because sometimes you can see that ahead of time. I mean, not every time, but there are certain indications that they like, okay, this is going to be something that's not going to work. And he was willing and able to then turn those people away. And so that those two things alone dramatically decreased the amount of turnover that he had. I think part of the thing he didn't say, like the unsaid, unspoken piece, was that not enough time had gone by either. So with I don't know how quickly he was losing the other ones, but he might lose a couple along the way that he has right now, because it's only been 4 months. But still, I think that 4 months in is actually a pretty solid amount of time for
Hmm.
somebody. So,
Hmm.
yeah, those are the main things that he said made the difference for him. And it was a pretty short conversation, like I said, because it was in the middle of a entire meetup. But those were the main things.
Yeah. So I think that both of them are great. I mean, obviously the confidence side of things, that was one thing that we talked about. You asked me like, hey, like what's your take on it? And that's the direction I went. So to hear that that's a big part of what helped him is super cool, right? The other side of, just talking about like vetting your potential clients a little bit more, that's something that I think that almost every coach needs to learn. I learned that myself, and every now and then you'll still have those clients that like you feel like you vetted pretty well, and then you get in and you're like, oh no. But for the most part, if you're able to take that time and just understand that like you're here to serve and not act out of a place of desperation,
Hmm.
or even not even just desperation, but maybe even just overly excited kind of thing, it's gonna work out better for you. If you slow down, you take your time, you make sure that this is not only the type of person demographically that makes sense for you, but more importantly, I would say is the psychographics, like the type of person that they are. That's gonna pay dividends like 100%. There are a couple more things that I would say, even just to our listeners, to maybe consider that might help with dropout rate and stuff like that. If it's cool if
Yes,
I just kind of share.
Yes, but before you do, just so we don't, lose this
You're
tangent,
good.
I
You're
just
good.
wanna add in one thing. When we're talking about vetting, I think it's actually a good idea to continually vet, and that's okay. So don't feel like, "Oh, I didn't do such a great job vetting this person before they came in, and now I'm stuck with them." You actually can continue to vet and be able to say, "I don't know that this is working out." Like, I actually did have a coach reach out to me. It was a long time ago now, but where that was the issue. It was like, I already brought this person in. It's not working out. How do I let them go graciously? How do I fire my client technically rather than them firing me? And so I just wanted to just throw that in there before we move away, since it would be awkward coming back to it.
Yep. Yep. And that can save you a lot of headaches in the long run as well, if you were to do that. So it's a good point there. Good point. Couple other suggestions that I would have is I think it's interesting that these people are hopping in and then after so much time they hop out. I don't know how much time has passed. I don't know like what the structure of like his program looks like, or I don't know any of that. So
Nor do I.
take it with a grain of salt. But I think that the first thing is just crafting some sort of like structure around follow up with these clients. If you're meeting with them once a month for an hour at a time and you only talk to them when you're meeting them, I don't know. I think that that's probably challenging for some people. They probably feel like, well, is this guy actually helping me? He shows up and he takes my money one month and then I don't hear from him for a month kind of thing. Like, you know what I mean? So I think that like following up in between your meetings to see how things are going and to hold them accountable is really important. Also, maybe even like shooting them a reminder message the day before or the day of, like, hey, we have our meeting today, blah, blah, blah. Just more communication, I think,
Hmm.
would really be beneficial. And maybe he's already been doing that. I don't know. But that is one thing that if he hasn't, I would suggest like, hey, like this might be something to think about and implement as well. On top of that, there's two other things I would say too. In the consultation, so before they actually sign on, and as you're like outlining what the program looks like, how you can help them, all those different types of things, there should be a very clear explanation of what your expectations are if they were to step into the program. So for example, like when I'm going through this with my potential clients, I tell them like the way I structure my program is that it's a base of 6 months. Now after that 6 months, you can keep going if you'd like to, and we can talk more about what that might look like, but it is a minimum of 6 months. and it's like a required minimum. And the reason for that is because I want to make sure that we are able to do the things we need to do, that things sink in, and it's not something you just do for a couple months and then fall off. And I want to make sure that there's enough room for you to ask for support with things that you need in that moment as well. So it is a minimum of 6 months, making that very clear. Like it's a minimum, it's a minimum, it's a minimum kind of thing, right? And then give them the opportunity to continue beyond that. But I think that in the consultation, it needs to be very clear that that's the case. Then, piggybacking off of that, as you send out your agreements and your contracts after they sign on, or as they sign on, rather, there should be a clause in there that talks about this. Like, hey, if you were to drop out of the program prematurely, then you're going to be responsible for 100% of the remaining program investment kind of thing. And that way, like, if they were to say that they want to drop out, you can refer back to your agreement and you can then decide how you want to handle that. Do you want to collect the remaining, percentage that's due? Do you want to work with them? Or sometimes it's even just a friendly reminder to them, like, hey, you can drop out if you'd like. I'm not going to force you to stay in, but just so you know, this is the case. So it might be in your best interest to keep going. And that right there can really help with the dropout rate as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it adds a little extra skin in the game for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Now, if you
again,
fire
going
them,
back
you don't
to
need to.
some of the language that you were talking about before, if and when they sign that agreement, that's their choice,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And if they were to drop out, it's their choice.
Still their choice. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So now we're not choosing, to take credit for whatever their decision is because it's in writing and they saw it, they signed it, we move forward kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great points. If you fire them, you don't have to have them pay you. just a little heads up there. but everything else, yeah, that I think that's actually really, really good. It gives the agency back to your client, and that's what we're all about, is giving them the opportunity to make those decisions in an empowered way and to feel good about them, and or to not feel good about them, but to experience the consequences of those decisions in a safe manner. So that's really what we do.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, thank you for adding those extra ones on. I just wanted to throw one last thing on there. This is just another plugin for those meetups. You guys, when you show up, I mean, I know that this individual, had I not asked about the plane, probably wouldn't have even jumped into the conversation at the moment. But I'm really, really glad that I asked and that he was willing to engage in that conversation with me. And so it's just a reminder that if you're nervous about meeting with other people or asking your questions, you're not the only one who's nervous about that. And it's really just a safe place to be able to do that, just to unpack some of this stuff. So please feel free to connect with us, like Cody said, in our Facebook group and find out, where do I come to these meetups? How do I have access to you guys? Because these are the conversations that we love to have with you. So thanks so much for tuning in today. And we look forward to seeing you next week for another episode of the Financial Coaches Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Financial Coaches Podcast, brought to you by New Money Habits and Sizemore Financial Coaching. Submit your questions to our hosts by emailing podcast@newmoneyhabits.com. Be sure to subscribe to be notified of future episodes and join our growing group of like-minded coaches on Facebook. And until next time, happy coaching.